So today we're lucky enough to be sitting right here at M1 Concourse in Pontiac, Michigan. And we're with the founder, the guy who started it all, Brad Oleshansky. Thank you so much for being here.
Thank you for having me.
And I should say thank you for having us, really, because this is a beautiful place.
Oh, this is what it's all about. Happy to have people here.
Love it. Love it. So to jump right into it, tell us, what this really is a dream for the car enthusiast. And can you explain, or how would you explain this to somebody who doesn't understand the concept? They've never been to what we're sitting in today. How would you explain it to somebody?
Well, I explain it differently to different audiences, but the simplest way I explain it, which I don't use my marketing, is it's a country club, but with a racetrack instead of a golf course.
Sure.
But really it's much more than that, because the garage component, the club component, is only a tiny part of it. Because we do public events and we do driving schools and we do corporate events and we do all kinds of things. So it's really, if you distill it down, it's really an event business. It's an event platform. So we have a venue and we rent out pieces of the venue for components, for projects and events. And it happens to have a foundation in the real estate, business with these garages, because these garages are all for sale. We don't rent these garages.
Makes a ton of sense. And we're going to kind of unpack all that a little bit later in the interview. Of all the businesses that you could have been involved with in your life, all the different things you could have done in life, you chose to get into this business. What motivated you to start M1 Concourse in the first place?
Yeah. So, if you would have asked me 20 years ago if I'd be doing this, it'd be absolutely not, because my career path was completely unintended. And it wasn't like I chose to do this either. It was, I had a career in the entertainment law world for a while, and then in the marketing services space and healthcare. And just was kind of fed up with public company bureaucracy and slow movement of business and not being able to control my own destiny. And I embarked on this project in 2012, to really figure out how can I create my own business around my love for cars.
Sure. And
that's what started it all. And it led into a very long and challenging journey of realizing starting a business, which I'd done before, but at this scale is not easy. And many people will root against you. And when you do something no one's done before it, in terms of putting pieces together, it just presents challenges. So, just not what I expected to do.
Sure, absolutely. And that's the thing, right? This has certainly never, this is the only of its kind in Michigan, correct? And we're going to talk later about your vision for putting these elsewhere across the country. What were some of those challenges early on? And let me ask you specifically, what was the land used for before, you took over? What was here before?
So in the mid 1800s, it was a foundry, steel and iron foundry. Then in the late 1800s, it was a car company called the Rapid Motor Company, which is the first company that made municipal vehicles. And then General Motors in 1909, I think, bought Rapid, and this became the home of GMC truck and bus.
Is that right?
So there's 100 years of auto manufacturing. There's actually a factory on the site. From the edge of the property to the edge of the property, its entire site was covered in a 2 million square foot factory.
Wow.
For General Motors. And then GM decommissioned the factory about 15 years ago. And then, I think tore it down maybe 13 years ago. And, that was my vision of how to revitalize it. Into something cool.
It's funny. I remember meeting you when you were first getting started, and you told me about your vision for revitalizing this land. And, I think a lot of people were excited to see this thing work. What were some of the early challenges? Because to your point, I bet you had to go through a lot to make this vision a reality. First off, were there any other possibilities, or was this the only location?
No, it took me a year to find this location because I wanted to be on or near Woodward. There's no large parcels on or near Woodward.
Sure.
State Fairgrounds I looked at.
Okay.
People had tried previously to put a real racetrack on State Fairgrounds, and got denied over and over and over. I thought that was, not the best neighborhood for this project. And originally, by the way, I wasn't going to do a track. I was only doing garages because that was what's been successful in other places. Most tracks have not been successful. But when I figured out they're not successful because they're located in rural areas, I realized that, if you could get it approved close by, that could be a huge win.
Yeah.
And, so I looked all over town and looked a lot, and this really stars aligned when GM went bankrupt, unfortunately.
Right.
And these properties became available, but you couldn't buy this property. You had to pitch the federal government on your business plan, which, as my real estate developer friends say, I've been successful because I'm willing to go through brain damage that other developers won't go through.
Yeah.
Because, I mean, imagine having to deal with the federal government on trying to acquire a piece of property. It was.
Oh, I couldn't even imagine. It was ridiculous. I would imagine. So what was, going back to that time, and maybe you don't want to go back there in your mind, you got past that now, but going back just for a minute, what was some of the pushback? I mean, what was some of the things that they didn't maybe want to see the project go through? What was their side of that argument?
Well, the challenge of the time is interesting because it wasn't a matter of pushback. It was a matter of lack of pushback. Pontiac was bankrupt.
Sure.
Had no city government. They had fired everybody. City Hall was one person working in there, an emergency manager, who was a great guy who bought into my vision immediately. So that was a step that would have taken a year elsewhere. It took a day with him.
Wow.
Oakland County had to support the project. So the federal government said, you're the underdog. We don't know you. You're a nobody. Other real developers want this property, but we like your idea. If you can get the city, the county, and the state to support you, we'll let you buy this property.
Okay.
So I had to get the city, but I had the city in a day.
Sure.
And Lou Schimmel, emergency manager, should be credited with a huge part of this. And then Oakland County took a while. Oakland County, God bless Brooks Patterson, great guy. But they weren't huge supporters of Pontiac because Pontiac had so much trouble in one of the wealthiest communities in the world, or in the U.S. Right. Oakland County, Pontiac was sort of like left aside.
Yeah.
General Motors, left Pontiac and decimated the city. So Oakland County wasn't really fast to help, so it took a while. The state of Michigan really was not very helpful. They tried to help the best they could, but at the time, MEDC was not really set up to help in any way.
Right.
There's a long story about that, but they weren't really set up to help projects that could be successful. They were set up to help projects that could not be successful.
Wow.
So, so that took a good 9 months to put the piece together. Plus, this was a toxic. Well, people thought this was a toxic site. All General Motors factories were considered to be environmental disasters. I didn't know that when I did the deal. I knew that people suspected that, but it turns out this property was very clean. So it had very little issues, which is a huge win.
It's huge. Yeah.
But there was so many complexities. The site was covered in concrete slabs that were 2 to 10 feet thick.
Wow.
So someone had to remove that before they do anything.
So you get past, I mean, it's almost unfathomable, of what you've gone through to create this vision into the reality that it is today. When did you actually officially open? When could people buy garages? When was it functional?
Yeah. I think I started selling garages in 2015. I sometimes lose track of the years, but I think in 15 we started pre-selling. So nobody invested in this deal. I put all my own money into this. Everyone said I was crazy, stupid, wasting my money. Who's going to come to Pontiac? No one's going to buy these things. Roger Penske, guys like that would say it would have been done before it was a good idea. Someone would have done it. So I had to find a way to finance it, and no bank would give me money. But we found, basically Comerica Bank. I convinced that if we could pre-sell a certain number of garages, they would give me a construction loan. And they set out a crazy goal. They said, well, you need to get $15 million of commitments before we'll give you the rest of the money. And, I set a ridiculous goal of selling $15 million of garages in 6 months before we, broke ground, which how would you do that when it was a concrete wasteland?
Right.
But, I did it. I basically stood in car showrooms and charity events and places with a tabletop model of a garage and, hustled people.
Yeah. Well, it's phenomenal. I mean, you deserve a lot of credit. I mean, a lot of people are benefiting from the hard work that you've done. And now, what is the official name of what we're experiencing today? What are these actually called?
So we call them private garages.
Okay.
And the project is M1 Concourse. And there's the private garage community, which is one component, but then there's the public access, which is the developer. I sold the business. We'll talk about that.
Yep.
But they now own the track and the event space and the other things that are not built yet. The garages are part of an HOA. So I own this garage and we all own these garages, like a condo.
Got it. And this whole plaza, if you will, is the biggest of its kind in the world. Is that accurate?
Yeah. So large garage, private garage community.
Okay.
On one site by far.
Yeah.
And really, there's facilities that have tracks and event space and clubhouses, and there's a facility that have garages. No one's really brought the two together the way we have. There are some other facilities that have garages, but they're more like large warehouse buildings and people share them.
Okay.
So no one's really put garage condos on the edge of a track, and then really all the other corporate event business. No one's brought those components together.
Got it.
It's either just a garage facility or a private racetrack or a corporate event venue. And we kind of combine them all into one.
M1 brought it together. So let's kind of talk through the different uses of this project. So you've got the private garages, right? You've got the corporate event. You've got the track. What are some of the different use cases that people enjoy here? Yeah.
So what people don't realize is that the garage owners, there's a club that these owners have to join to use the track.
Okay.
It's not automatic. All right. And we have very high participation, but very few people actually use the track. So this is where a lot of people have a flawed business model why when I flew around the world studying these businesses, I realized that a private racetrack for a bunch of, rich guys to drive their cars is not a viable business. One is there's not enough. Well, one is if you build in a rural area, no one's going to drive 2 to 3 hours round trip to do it.
Right.
You might get very high-end racing aficionados who can fly their jet in and go do it for the day. That's a tiny audience. And 2 is that when you go to the general enthusiast like we have here, and I don't want to take my car out for hours at a time. It's very expensive. It's time consuming. It's dangerous, whatever. So when I realized that model could be flipped where we give our garage owner club members 8 hours a week of track time, which nobody uses an hour of that. We have like 10 people that use the most time. The rest of people come here and there once a week, twice a month, whatever. But that way I can use the track for the rest of the time, which is like our main business here, which is corporate events. So we do everything from dealer training for the OEMs to commercial video shoots for car companies. And most of our clients are just business owners that want to take their team out and do a cool team building activity, offsite board meeting, client entertainment. And really we have a platform with the track and we try and monetize every hour through driving schools and team building and throw rides. Our biggest thing we do on this track is take people on rides.
Yeah. So can people for the corporate team events, certainly they can have a driver take them out. Is there a world where they get to drive cars on the track?
So for smaller groups, usually groups of 30 or less, we put them in a classroom for an hour. We teach them basic driving skills. We put them in cars, in groups, with an instructor first driving, then we switch seats with the instructor and then they do lead follow.
Yeah.
But once you get bigger than that, it's hard to manage that many people. So usually if it's 30 plus people, sometimes we've had events with 800 employees here and we just do throw rides all day with, we have a fleet of cars here. And we run people through those vehicles.
Very cool. So I've got to ask, obviously we're large part of 2020. We've been dealing with this pandemic. How does that affect a business like this with the biggest, it sounds like the biggest part of your business is corporate events.
Yeah. So the other component I didn't talk about is public events. So we have public, we have Cars and Coffee and we do a huge event with Dodge every summer with a drag race.
Sure.
We do food truck festivals and we do car shows and auctions and various things. So the public event business has been decimated.
Sure.
But there's very few activities like driving a car on a track that are completely social distanced. So a lot of the corporate events still continued on. Challenge was a lot of big companies, didn't want to put their name on an event where it didn't have, true perfect social distancing.
Right.
But for small group events, our owner use of their garages and the club is more than ever because half these people are working out of their garages now.
Okay.
Before this was a casual entertainment place. We do have some people that work out of the garage, but now if you go to half these garages, people are actually working out of their garage.
Yeah, makes a ton of sense.
Yeah.
All right. So, this is a car enthusiast, dream, right? This is what people, I would imagine they absolutely love this. They get to drive their dream cars. You have, I would imagine, been able to drive a lot of cars. What's been your favorite? Of all the cars you've been able to drive on the track, what's your favorite car to drive? And then I'll ask you some more questions about cars.
So the funny thing is I've barely driven on this track.
Is that right?
You get to enjoy yourself. Now someone has to run the place.
Sure.
And I tend to work a lot. I would say my 2 favorite cars on the track are the McLaren 720S, which one of the Free Press reporters, we let a lot of the news reporters test cars here.
Okay.
So I drove it with him one day. And then David Fisher from Suburban was shooting a TV spot for Suburban, and they interviewed me as part of the spot. And there was a vintage Mercedes. I forgot the model.
I saw that interview.
I forgot the model, but it's like the same car that they do gull wing, but it wasn't gull wing, it's convertible. And that was amazing.
Wow.
It was like a very rare car. And
it was a great
I'm a classic
shot.
car guy.
Okay.
At heart.
Yeah. Yeah. So, I think a lot of people, especially Metro Detroit, I mean, they're big Porsche guys, I think a lot of people just have this love for Porsche. And, is there a car that you see on the track more than, a different model, or you see everything here?
Well, we certainly see everything here. I would say if you look in the garages here, there's probably an equal amount of Porsches, Mustangs, and Corvettes.
Okay.
I mean, obviously skew a lot towards American cars here, but when you get a track, Porsche is the car. I mean, there's no better car for a track that you can beat on and never have an issue. But because we're in Detroit, we got a ton of Corvettes, Mustangs, Camaros. We have a lot of automotive industry people that own garages.
Yeah.
So there's just a tremendous amount of American muscle product.
Yeah.
But we get everything from, we have supercars here. We got Enzo Ferraris and La Ferraris and 918 Spiders. And the most popular car on the track is a Porsche GT3 RS.
Is that right?
There's probably 20 of them here.
Wow.
And that's like a serious, high-end.
Yeah.
Basically a race car.
So can the general public come and just watch cars go around the track?
No. So we have open track days once a month for the general public to participate, but it's limited to 65 cars.
Okay.
Spectators are allowed at those events. But everything else, unless they pay for a driving school or driving program, everything else is private. There's no spectator.
Got it.
Here.
Okay.
Other than cars and coffee type events.
Sure. So going back, you started all over again. Okay. I know you don't want to go back there in your mind probably, but I'll take you back. You go do the whole project over again. Is there something that sticks out to you that maybe a big thing that you would have changed, that you would have done differently earlier on?
Well, I'm doing the whole project over again 3 times right now. So every day I think about what would I do differently, because I have to evolve it. The good news is M1 was the test case for what I'm doing now. So my ramp up time is in every situation is 1,000 times faster. I'm in areas like Tampa, Florida, which are challenging, because high growth city. It wasn't like Pontiac that was dead and they wanted this, even though Tampa wants it. There's a lot of bureaucracy. There's a lot of new issues with wetlands and water management and protected species and all kinds of things that I didn't deal with here. Here, they're like, do whatever you want. We have no permit department. We have no people in the city. If you do, if you have professional people, like, we trust you and go with it. And that's why this project is a success. Lou Schimmel, the guy I mentioned, and the mayor, Waterman, who became the mayor, she's phenomenal. And she realizes, let's make sure we support these people. If they want to invest money in this town, let it happen. We obviously don't cut corners. We're not going to build unsafe buildings. Building departments tend to become very bureaucratic and just want to say no to everything. Right. There's some person trying to justify their existence. Well, Pontiac, doesn't have that. And it's starting to get there again. Yeah. But they never have that level of bureaucracy like I'm dealing with in other cities. Okay. So, but back to the original question about doing it differently. The good news is, because we evolved and we grew so fast here in multiple phases, like, I've learned what to do and not to do. Sure. From the garage component. So the garages are, really easy to figure out. The prices have gone up significantly. So I know I can start at a higher price and not leave a lot on the table. Sure. We're actually doing different building in Florida because of hurricanes. You have to do different type of buildings. So concrete buildings, which is a new learning for me, which is great. And I'm excited about it. And then operations, like, it's just about testing and learning. Like, everything we did here was a test and learn. Some events didn't work. Some did. Some things I want to do, like open track days, like, you don't make a lot of money on open track day, cause you can't charge enough. Sure. Cause people will complain like, oh, I go to Waterford Hills for $100. They don't realize that a brand new track costs millions and millions of dollars to build, but I still do those things because I want my vision originally was, unlike these other country clubs, I don't want to block people from coming. Like, there's an entry level point at the garages here. Yeah. If you can't drop a couple $100,000, you're not getting the garage, right? Right. So I realize that's a tiny percent of the audience. Well, my vision was, how do we make it inclusive for everybody? So cars and coffee, you can come here for free. Actually, we'll feed you, give you a donut and coffee. That's the base level. Yeah. Then you could buy a t-shirt for $20. Then you could take a driving class for $300, teen defensive driving. Then you could take an open track day, bring your car. That's great. For $395. Yeah. Or you can take a high performance driving school for $1,500. Or you can do a corporate event here for $15,000. Like, you can go from zero to. That's great. The largest investment someone's made here, I think it's $2 million for a garage. Wow. Well, and all of those things, I would imagine, build the audience. Helps spread the word, build the audience, build the excitement, gives you more momentum. So let's talk about that momentum. So you launched your new company, I think in 2019, correct? And that's the Motor Enclave. Got it. So
tell us a little bit about that company, what its purpose and what its vision is.
So, I mean, with the experience I had here at M1, I realized I had people calling me from all around the country, had read about the project, have been here for events, and said, you need to build this in my town, Austin, Scottsdale, Tampa, Atlanta, Boston.
So cool.
Columbus. And so that made me realize there's a much bigger opportunity than just Detroit. I kind of got likes to seize opportunity, but also limit my risk. So I really didn't pursue it that quickly originally. A couple of years ago, the opportunity came up to sell my interest in M1, which was not my goal at all. Sure. But when I saw the opportunity elsewhere, I realized it's a much bigger opportunity. I love Detroit. I'm still going to keep my garage forever. And it's great. But when you think about places of year-round weather, this track is closed 4 months a year. Okay. So you can't make any money for 4 months a year. It's a problem. We've sold most of the garages already. So sure. A lot of the economic opportunity had gone away. So I said, how do I do this in other cities that there's opportunity? And I just, embarked on changing the name because M1 is a woodword. Yeah. And it's not really ubiquitous across the whole country. A lot of people always called this the Enclave. Like, where else can you have a, place where you can be safe and controlled environment behind gates? Right. And it truly is an enclave. So I want to create a new brand around that. But the vision really, as I started to get into it, one is selecting sites based on data. I knew what my core customers looked like. Yeah. But I wanted to use that data of car registration data, wealth and growth data, accessibility, what else is in the marketplace, car shows, events, swap meets, auctions, other tracks, other things, and map out the whole country using that data. So we selected these cities that my first group of projects is Columbus, Ohio, Nashville, Tennessee, and Tampa, Florida. So we select those based on data, but also looking at the mix of what is the business we want to be in? Right. Similar to here, but I knew that all the car companies that rented here always talk about SUVs, off-road. So in Tampa, we're building an off-road track. So cool. Turns out that off-road track also has huge potential for the general public and the garage owners. There's so much opportunity when you think about if you have more than one site, reciprocity for members. So if I buy a garage in Columbus, Ohio, I get to use the track in Tampa. Very cool. Or if I'm the official tire sponsor and I'm Michelin, say, which is hopefully one of my hopefully become a sponsor. They can have their name across all the properties versus one project. And then when it comes to, companies that are doing traveling tours like Porsche or GM or whoever, they'd rather engage with one company and be able to route their tour through knowing that it's certain level of quality, all the same procedures and process, one contract, one insurance company. Makes a ton of sense. It's, it just becomes a much better business. And the same back office and same marketing materials, same website. And it becomes really that the execution is the hardest part, is getting the project approved and out of the ground. Yeah. Once you're built, all the rest of the stuff is plug and play, turnkey. That's great. So I'm most excited getting to that point. Right now I'm mired in the pre-construction stuff, which is not fun, but almost through it after a year and a half. Good for you. So which location did you say is going to open first, or are those three locations going to open up all at the same time? So Columbus, Ohio, and Tampa, Florida will be simultaneous. Nashville will probably be about 9 months behind. Got it. And when are those planning to launch? So we're going to break ground in the next 3-4 months on each of those. Nashville, I just put a piece of property in a contract in Nashville, so it's a little longer, but I expect to open the first two projects in summer of 2022. Got it. Columbus might open earlier because there's no track. Yeah. So last question I always like to end with when I interview somebody is, I look at you as a guy, as a successful business entrepreneur, have a ton of respect for what you've been able to do. I'm always curious, if you went back and you got to give your younger self one piece of advice, do you go to law school? Do you not go to law school? Do you start a business earlier? What would that one piece of advice be for your younger self? Well, I have two 20-year-olds, so I give the advice every night, which they're sick of hearing me say. Well, I went to law school, which I tell everyone to go to law school. I think it's an amazing background, even if you don't want to be a lawyer. I didn't want to be a lawyer. Sure. So it's helped me tremendously. Law school does two things. One is it creates a base of knowledge. That's a good point. All different types of aspects of life. And two is it gives you credibility. It doesn't matter what law school you went to. So as soon as someone's here's your lawyer, they think you're much smarter than you are. That's not the case. But it's a good training. But more importantly, I think, and this is what I tell my kids, is start a business now. This is a time to take risks in life. You have nothing to lose when you're 20 years old, 22 years old, 25 years old. Once you get married and have kids and get a house, you're going to be stuck in a corporate job for a long time. Yeah. And that's what was me. I mean, I should have, if I would have started a business when I was 20, I'd probably not be working anymore. Yeah. Right. Exactly right. But that's the time you take risks. And nowadays, looking at these cameras and thinking about video production, it's so inexpensive to start a business.
Yeah.
I worked in the editing space, during college. I worked in summers in film editing here in Detroit at a studio in Detroit, did TV spots. The equipment we had cost, they had it was called EditDroid. It was a thing that George Lucas designed using laser discs we had hundreds of laser disc players lined up, and the system cost millions of dollars. Now for a couple $grand, you get a laptop and you can do all the same stuff. And obviously you get nicer cameras are more expensive, but still these cameras, 20 years ago would be $30,000.
Yeah. And you don't need the brick and mortar. You don't need any of that. You can start a business online for virtually nothing.
I tell every young person I meet, start a business. I tell my daughter, write it down, start a business, create it, whatever. If it fails tomorrow, it doesn't matter. Like that. I think the American dream is having your own business and executing on your vision, whatever it is. I mean, I tell my kids, I don't care what it is. You want to create a backpack, you want to create a movie, you want to do fashion merchandise. I don't know. But just try something. Yeah. And this year, I think people have seized on the opportunity more than ever. I've seen a ton of amazing innovation. People leaving their jobs finally, either involuntarily or voluntarily saying now's the time. So I think we're going to see a huge boom. Unfortunately, we're seeing a huge loss of small business because of COVID. We're seeing a huge boom in entrepreneurs starting their careers.
Yeah, I would agree. And Brad, I think that's great advice. And, I want to thank you because, again, I've got a lot of respect for what you've done. I know a lot of people feel the same way about you. And so thank you so much for having us. And, I'm excited to watch you and your future endeavors. And I'm sure it'll be nothing but successful, just like the M1 has been here. So thank you so much.
Thank you very much.